and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
Today, I'll be continuing with my college football game-by-game prediction and roster discussion videos. Today, I'll be doing the Iowa Hawkeyes. So, Iowa had the 33rd ranked recruiting class in the country in 2025. They didn't have any five-star recruits, but they did have four-star recruits. And head coach Kirk Ferentz enters his 27th season as the head coach of Iowa. No current college football head coach has been with their program as long as he has. And he hasn't won any national or Big Ten championships, but he has coached in the Big Ten championship 3 times. And he's gotten Iowa 10+ win seasons. And he's not won less than 8 games since 2012. So starting on the offensive side, they weren't very good here last year. They averaged only 24.1 points per game, but that was a big improvement from the year before, where they only averaged 14 points per game. I think their offense will struggle this year and be worse than it was last year, but I don't think it will be as bad as it was in 2023. So at quarterback, Iowa has always been terrible here. Last year, they averaged only 131.6 yards passing per game, which ranked 129th in the country. But they do bring in Mark Gronowski at quarterback from South Dakota State, which is an FCS team, but they are one of the best FCS teams. And I think already that he's an upgrade at quarterback for Iowa. The question is how much of an upgrade for them, because it has worked out well before for Power 4 teams that bring in a quarterback that was good at the FCS level. Minnesota last year would be an example of that, but it is also a big gamble. But Gronowski has started 55 college games and is at 49-6 as a starter, and he has 12,075 yards of total offense and 10,308 yards passing in his college career, and 93 career touchdown passes and 27 career touchdown runs. But wide receiver is a problem for Iowa, like it always is. I can't remember when Iowa's even had one good wide receiver. Now, they do have two starting wide receivers coming back, but neither were very good last year, and they didn't use the transfer portal to try to fix that. Now, at running back, they're going to be down here, I think, because they lose Caleb Johnson, who had over 1,500 yards rushing last season. He's off to the NFL, and he was the reason why Iowa's offense was so much better last year. Now, they do have some decent running backs, so I do still think they'll be okay here. And on the offensive line, they do have 3 starters coming back from what was one of the best offensive lines in the country last year that only allowed 17 sacks, and they averaged 5.1 yards per run because of the great run blocking and 197.2 rushing yards per game, which ranked 24th in the country. Now, it may not be quite as good as it was last year, But when a line that was as good as that one gets three starters back, it should be solid. And they get back at one of the best centers in the country, Logan Jones, who only allowed five quarterback pressures and didn't allow a sack all year last year. So now on the defensive side, Iowa returns their defensive coordinator. Phil Parker is his name, and he's been their defensive coordinator since 2012, and he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. Iowa's defense was top 10 in the country last year. They only gave up on average at 16 points per game. And now, I don't think their defense will be great this year. But you'll see why in a minute. But Iowa's defense has been good for so long that I still expect it to be a good defense. So on the defensive line, they return Aaron Graves and Ethan Herkett, who are two of the best defensive linemen in the country. Herkett had last year 56 tackles and 6.5 sacks and three forced fumbles. And Graves had 33 tackles and six sacks and three pass breakups and three forced fumbles. And they have Max Llewellyn or whatever his name is, who didn't start any games last year, but played in all 13 games and had 22 tackles and six sacks and 29 total quarterback pressures and three pass breakups and a forced fumble. I think he'll be really good for them this year. But they do lose on the defensive line. Dante Craig, who was a really good player. So at linebacker, this is concerning because they lose two really good linebackers, Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson, who are both off to the NFL. They've been two of the best linebackers in the country the past two seasons, and they don't have any proven linebackers to take over. But in the secondary, they do return Deshaun Lee, who had last season 42 tackles and four pass breakups and an interception in 12 games at cornerback. And then at cornerback, they also return TJ Hall, who played in 12 games and started seven games last season and had 19 tackles and two pass breakups and an interception. And then at safety, they do lose Sebastian Castro, but they do get back Xavier Nwankapa, or whatever his name is, who had last season 41 tackles and a pass breakup. And here's a clip of a pick six by him.
Now you see Iowa defenders loading the box. The play fake for Wade. Reads it over the middle. It's picked off. That is Xavier Wampa. There goes Wampa.
And special teams is, I think, the best in the country this year. Iowa's special teams is a bigger part of their team than it is for most teams. But they return Caden Wetjen, who was one of the best return specialists in the country last season. He averaged 28 yards per kick return and 12.6 yards per punt return, and he had a kick return for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown. And then they returned one of the best kickers in the country, Drew Stevens, who made 20 of 23 field goal attempts, including 9 field goals from over 40 yards away. And they return a really good punter, Rice Dakin, who averaged 44.1 yards per punt as a freshman last season. So now for the game by game predictions, starting with Albany. Iowa should win this game, no problem. Their second string should get to play the whole second half of this one. And now on the road at Iowa State. Iowa will have a chance to win this game because their defense, I think, is about as good as Iowa State's is. The problem, though, for Iowa is Iowa State's offense, I think, is going to be quite a bit better than theirs, mainly because of their quarterback at Rocco Beck, and I think that makes the difference. I'm going with Iowa State. So now Massachusetts, this should be a easy win for Iowa, one where their second string should get to play in the second half. And now on the road at Rutgers. So I was actually going to pick Rutgers to win this game because it is on the road, and they do, I think, have a better offense than Iowa does. But I don't think they have a better defense, and I do trust the Iowa coach a little bit more than the Rutgers coach. And I think that special teams for Iowa could be big for them in this game. I think it'll be close, but I'm going with Iowa. So now, Indiana. I think this will be close, and it being at home, I think Iowa will have a chance in this one. And I think if Indiana does lose to a team that is not great this year, it will be this game. And Iowa, I think, can handle Indiana at the line of scrimmage on both sides. But I couldn't pick Iowa to win this game because the quarterback that Indiana brought in, Fernando Mendoza, he threw for over 3,000 yards at California last year with a horrible offensive line that allowed 50 sacks. And Iowa's not got a wide receiver anywhere near as good as Indiana's Elijah Sarrett. And then on defense, Indiana's got three possible All-American players. Mikel Kamara on the defensive line, and Aiden Fisher at linebacker, and D'Angelo Pons at cornerback. Now on the road at Wisconsin, I was going to pick Wisconsin to win this game at first because it is on the road. Wisconsin does bring in a transfer quarterback from Maryland. His name's Billy Edwards. Now, Maryland was a terrible team last year, but it wasn't because of him. He had over 2,800 yards passing in 11 games. And Wisconsin does return one pretty good receiver. Vinny Anthony had over 670 yards receiving last year. But except for him, they're questionable at wide receiver. And like Iowa, they don't have a star running back right now. Wisconsin also returns three starters on their offensive line, including a really good center, Jake Renfro. But defensively, the defensive line for Iowa, I think, is a lot better than Wisconsin's. But the rest of the defense, I think Wisconsin is better. I think it'll be close, but I think special teams for Iowa could be big in a game like this, and I trust the coach at Iowa more right now than I do the coach at Wisconsin. I'm going with Iowa. Penn State, this is just a big mismatch for Iowa. I think it's going to be a blowout loss. Penn State's going to be a better passing team than Iowa, and they've got much better running backs and even better lines of scrimmage. And they've got a better defense too. So now Minnesota. Good news in this one for Iowa is Iowa's got a good defensive line, and Minnesota's going to lean on their run game. So I think Iowa can slow that down. But Minnesota's defense, I think, is going to also be able to stop Iowa. Now, I think Iowa will have the quarterback advantage. A game like this, to me, really just came down to home field advantage, which is Iowa. So I'm going with them. Now Oregon, this won't be a good matchup for Iowa. Oregon always has a much better offense than Iowa does. And in the past, Iowa has had usually a better defense than Oregon, but I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think Oregon's defense will be better. Now, their defensive line, I don't think will be, but the rest of the defense, I think. Oregon will be better. I think Oregon will get this win fairly easily over Iowa. So now on the road at Southern Cal, I'd give Iowa a chance in this one because their offensive line, I think it will win the battle with the USC defensive line and be able to run some in this game. And I think their defensive line will win the battle with the USC offensive line, and they'll be able to take away the run for USC and get some pressure on Mayava. But Iowa's secondary, I don't think can slow down USC's passing attack. And Iowa, it's offense, even though USC's defense, I think, will struggle this year, I don't think it's going to be good enough to be able to take advantage of that. I think that Iowa will lose this one in a close one, probably like a 28 to 24 type of game. And now Michigan State. So I do like the coach that Michigan State has. I think he'll eventually get them in the top half of the Big Ten, but I still think they're at least another year away from that. And Iowa, I think, is going to have a pretty big advantage at the line of scrimmage on both sides and this one. And with it being at home, I just don't see Iowa losing this one. But wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty close. And now on the road at Nebraska on a Friday night. The last 2 years, Iowa has won this game by a score of 13-10, and I think it'll be about that close this year. But I think it'll be a little bit higher scoring than that. And Nebraska, with them being the home team in this one, and I think them being a little bit better team than Iowa, I think they beat Iowa this time, and what I still think will be a pretty low scoring game. So I've got Iowa finishing the season at 6-6 overall and 4-5 in the conference. Before I did the prediction part and had just looked at the roster for Iowa, I thought this is probably a 7-5 or 8-4 team like they usually are, but this schedule doesn't set up well for them because Penn State and Oregon are games that are at home that it would be better if they were on the road because they've got no chance of winning them anyway. And then games against Nebraska and USC and Iowa State are ones that Iowa might even be favored in if they were at home, but they're all on the road. But that will be it with this video, and please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.